Can anyone tell me what an expression is in algebra? What's an expression? Not an equation, right? An equation's something different. What's an expression? It's pretty much when it's not an equation, right? There won't be an equal sign involved. So an expression is just like x plus 2 or 3x minus 7, right? These are binomial. How many terms in a binomial? Two. So a binomial radical expression is going to have a square root symbol or square roots involved somehow. It's going to have at least, well, it's going to have two terms, binomial, two terms, okay? And it's not going to have an equal sign. So binomial radical expressions, we're going to be adding and subtracting them for this lesson, and then we'll move into how you multiply and divide those in a little bit. But starting with adding and subtracting, and I kind of mentioned this to you the other day, you have to have the same index if you're going to add or subtract. So this n, right, has to be a square root plus a square root, or a cube root plus a cube root. You cannot do a square root plus a fourth root, okay? You cannot combine those. So make sure you have the same index, and you have to have the same radicand, so whatever comes underneath. If it's the square root of 2 plus the square root of 3, you cannot make that the square root of 5, okay? You cannot combine things that are different under your radical symbol, and I think that'll make more sense as we actually do it here. So take a look at this first one, okay? I always tell people, think of the radical like you would a variable, right? When you learned back in the day, maybe this is not how your teacher taught you, but when you learned how to deal with variables, they'd say like 5x plus 2x. Think of it as like 5 apples plus 2 apples is 7 apples, right? We didn't add the apples together as it's like variable. We added how many of each it was. So this is like saying 5 rad 3s plus 2 rad 3s is how many rad 3s? 7 rad 3s, okay? So just make sure you're not adding those 3s together. It is not 7 rad 6, okay? So 7 rad 3 will be that one. So then what about B? 7 fourth root 5 minus 3. It would be 4 fourth root 5. Okay, so you're subtracting that term out in front, but leaving the radical exactly how you see it. All right, go over to letter C. 2 root xy plus 12 root xy. 14 times the square root of x times y. Okay, how about D? Can't do it, right? This is a cube root. This is a square root. You cannot do it if that's your setup. So you can't combine this. Oops, sorry, that's really messy. So really your answer is 2 times the cube root of x plus 5 rad x. There's nothing more you can simplify there. Okay. All right.
Have to write it out again?
No, you can just tell me you can't combine it. That's fine. Or just put a box around the problem itself is fine. Example 2. Okay, so 3 problems here that are very similar to what we did yesterday, but now throwing some addition and subtraction in with it. So it should feel familiar how you're doing this. Look at this example 2. I cannot combine my 5 and my 3 right now. Why? They don't have the same radicand, okay? This number is different, but that number is not in its simplest form. How can you break down the square root of 20? 4 and 5, and please don't forget about our friend out in front, the 5, plus, then we have a 3, and now let's break down the 45. 9 and 5. Okay, so it's 5 rad 4 times rad 5 plus 3 times rad 3 times rad 5. That's pretty simplifiable. This is 5 still. What's the square root of 4? 2. So I'm saying 5 times 2, or 10. right? So this is 10 rad 5 on the left. What do you get on the right? That would be 9 rad 5, right? This is 3. So it's 3 times 3. Sorry, that's not division. I don't want you thinking I'm dividing that. This is 3 times 3. Remember, we are multiplying when there is a number next to a radical, okay? Don't add those together. This is not 6 rad 5, it's 9 rad 5. So just make sure you are multiplying there. You get 9 rad 5. So now it's a very simple problem. 10 rad 5 plus 9 rad 5 equals 19 rad 5. Okay, so it requires a little work, but it's not terribly complex work. I think where the most issues happen is there are steps involved and people try to take shortcuts in their head and not write it all down, and then they miss something silly and then it messes everything up. So if I could just encourage you, if there were a day to show lots of work, these are the types of problems where lots of work comes in really handy, especially on a quiz or a test. I can give you partial credit if you just made one silly little mistake somewhere. That would be awesome. Daniel.
Where did you get that 9 from? Like, I'm confused how you did
This 9?
Yeah.
So I had a 3, right?
Yeah.
And then I had the square root of 9
Okay.
and the square root of 5. So the square root of 9, I just simplified as 3. So now I brought this 3 down. 3 times 3, that's where the 9 here comes from. So it's like you're breaking it down and then you're breaking it down again, right? Simplify and simplify some more. You're welcome. Anything else on that?
Let's move on.
What?
Let's move on.
Let's move on. Let's get it done. All right, this one. We're going to break down whatever can be broken down, which in this case is all 3 of them. What can you break rad 18 into? 9 and 2. And remember, those are both radicals, right? The square root of 18 has to be the square root of 9 times the square root of 2. And don't forget about our friend. That plus, you have your 4. What is the square root of 8 going to break into? The 4 and the 2. And then it's minus, how about 72? What perfect square is 72? 36. Little heads up for you. If you see a 72 and you're like, ooh, I don't know, but you look at the previous stuff that you've done, the one that's going to stay put is a rad 2. So try dividing by 2 because it's probably that same radical, right? This is probably a 2, which means this is 36, and that works out beautifully. Doesn't always work that way, but a lot of the time it works that way. Okay, so you're here. Let's simplify. This is going to be 6. The square root of 9 is 3. You're multiplying them, not adding them. And we got the rad 2. This is 4. The square root of 4 is 2. And we've got the rad 2. This is 6. And the square root of 2. So again, simplify. And I don't need to see every one of these steps that I'm doing. I'm really doing this for the person who does want to see every one of these. God bless you. You don't have to show me all of the steps. You may show me part of these steps and you'll be just fine. 18 rad 2 plus 8 rad 2 minus 18 rad 2. Okay. In your answer, what radical is there going to be? Rad 2, not rad 6, not rad 8. Okay, don't multiply them, don't add them. It is the same radical. It's like our apples, right? 18 apples plus 8 apples minus 18 apples is some number of apples again. So there's going to be a rad 2. You're just going to take the coefficients to that rad 2. So it's 18 plus 8 is 26. 26 minus 18 is 8, so you get 8 rad 2. Questions on that? Do you want to try the variable one on your own? I think you can do it because I taught you how to do the variable stuff already. You just got to think through it. Why don't you try? Give it a go. I know some of you have answers.
Can we sum it? No.
Let's break it down.
Oh, I gotta add that.
So
Right, that's what you would.
the biggest mistake that happens on cube roots is paying attention to the fact that it's a cube root and not a square root, right? 16 is a perfect square. It's not a perfect cube. So you're going to break it into 8 times 2. What goes under the perfect root for your x's? X to what power? All of it. X cubed. Okay? Plus, and here's your little tip again. This is probably the same thing on the other side, right? So if it doesn't work out to that, double check it. It doesn't have to work out to that, but a lot of the time it does. So you have a 5. Let's move that over a little bit. And then it's the perfect cube and the not perfect cube. 54 is divisible by what perfect cube? 27, right? 27 times 2. And again, notice 2 and 2. That's usually how they end up. You still have the x cubed on the perfect side. So now simplify that. This is 2 times 2. What does that become? The cube root of x cubed. Just x, right? Well, yes, the whole thing is 2x. Times the cube root of 2 plus 5. What's the cube root of 27?
3.
Times 3. What's the cube root of x cubed? X times the cube root of 2. Okay, so now simplify this. 2 times x is 4x times the cube root of 2. Simplify this. 5 times 3 times x is 15x times the cube root of 2. And now you're going to add those together. You're not multiplying your x's. It doesn't become x squared, right? It's 4x plus 5x is 19x. And then you've got the cube root of 2. Good?